It's Super Bowl weekend this weekend, and if you haven't picked up already, there is a lot of things that your kids are going to be maybe exposed to as we watch the game. Sometimes it's the things with the halftime shows and the commentary or the players on the field. Sometimes it's the commercials that we might not be ready for to have the conversation with. But one thing that's a little bit lurking underneath the surface of all of this is the rise in gambling. And for some of us, if we haven't picked up on this already, there is a gentle push inside of culture to make gambling palatable and popular for adults and kids alike. So for those of us that have maybe a check in our spirit or actually biblical reasons why we don't think gambling is a good idea for us to train our kids in, it can be kind of a dark place because much of the world has kind of already accepted that it's okay. Well, today in the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, Dr. Kathy's going to look at this topic kind of head on. Why should we think well and deeply about what the culture is pushing off in gambling as something that's just innocent? Let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, online gambling and sports betting is on the rise in many strata inside of our culture. This widespread acceptance culturally is really impacting specifically teens and young adults. That's according to a C.S. Mott Children's Hospital national poll on children's health that found that from a nationwide sample of parents, ages 14 to 18, there is a rise in online betting in teens. 1/3 of parents, about 31%, actually say that they or another adult in their household now participates in online, in-person, or social betting. And 63% say that they have heard ads for online sports betting in the casino in the past year. And over half of these parents don't know what their state's legal age for online betting is. 2/3 of the parents think the legal age for online betting should be 21 years old, while 22% think the age should be 18 to 20 years old. And about 1 out of 10 parents feel online betting should not be legal at any age. Only 2% of parents think their teen has used an online betting platform, which was higher among parents of teen boys than teen girls. Most parents, about 55%, think that they would definitely know if their teen was betting online. And with all of that, many parents are uncertain whether online betting is more addictive than in-person gambling at a casino, and that actually social betting makes youth more likely to engage in online betting. Some are concerned also that it's too easy for teens to open up an online account, which is something that is really kind of a thing. Many youth are able to jump in and just set up an online sports gambling account. Now, this might feel kind of like a weird topic for us, but I kind of say that because, 5 years ago, this topic wouldn't have even reached our ears, but there's an incredible growing acceptance of online gambling as advertisements and things of that nature have really kind of grown. And so I wonder, is gambling something that's going to impact kids and our teens that we might not even recognize because the social acceptance of this has changed so dramatically? Why is gambling something that we should be maybe alert to or caution our kids against as they're growing up?
Because it is addictive. It certainly is. I mean, we know that. I know people who can't not buy a lottery ticket. And that's a different type of gambling. It is a gamble to spend, $1 to get $1 million or whatever the case would be. So it's addictive. It's a waste of money. Come on, let's be honest here. It's unhealthy. The people who are leading these kinds of things, they're not in it for you. They're in it for themselves. So it's not a healthy industry. If I can use the word industry to describe it, I think that I was shocked by these stats, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics are really interesting to me too, but I think the thing that I'm a little bit more kind of wondering is, what is that impact that gambling does? What is it about playing these games and almost kind of stepping in to trust somebody that is going to kind of hoodwink or swindle you? Dr. Kathy, I know I've said this before, but I used to work inside of the carny industry, right? And we would walk the games at the carnival, and we would know that every game that we stepped up to, that there was a high probability we weren't going to win, but we would do it anyway. We would engage it anyway. And I don't know if there's something to this for parents to just be mindful of, that our kids kind of get used to this idea and it becomes popular for them to step into these settings with people who really don't have their best interest in mind. What does it do for a kid to kind of experience that kind of world where there is a lot of manipulation, there is a lot of sleight of hand and, kind of tricking with the odds, and the things that we kind of put before them is you could win billions, but it's going to take billions of tries to win, right? What does that do for kids, especially when you think about their development, their identity, their core needs, all of that? What does that kind of do? Why is gambling something that we should be mindful of?
That's fascinating. It would absolutely mess with your security, of who can I trust and can I trust myself? And boy, the system's fixed. So what's that tell me about man, in general? So I think that's an issue. I think competence. Do I want my kids to spend time getting good at something like that? Or do I want them to invest their talent and their time in something that has a greater gain, for the good of culture? That would be a question I might ask. Do I want them hanging out with what might be less than great people? And, if we teach trust and security, and I want my kids to be like God, who is logical and faithful and consistent and dependable, then do I want them to be playing games of chance? Now, I can play a card game at home that is a game of chance, but there's no money involved and it's luck and some skill. It's not manipulation and an evil biased intent. If I found out my child was doing online gambling or even intrigued by it, I would ask why. What is it that's attractive to you about that? Mom, I want to beat the odds. I could get that. I could get some kids like, I'm going to be able to be the one that does it. So that's a competitive, logic smart, maybe prideful, people smart kid. I would find them a healthy way to do it in the home. I sure wouldn't want them going to an online site. And many of them are probably faking their age. And again, it just doesn't appeal to me. I don't like the feeling, even as we talk about it, Wayne.
Yeah, I don't like the feeling of it either, but I want to kind of lean into it a little bit because I do think that some might actually feel like gambling does build some sense of resilience. It kind of teaches you that when you get knocked down or when you lose or when you kind of have the odds stacked against you, that you should step up and kind of build resiliency. That understanding that the odds, and sometimes those odds kind of don't play out, is kind of an idea that many families might lean into and say, that's just kind of a lesson in life. You're going to take a shot and you're going to make it. And sometimes you're going to take a shot and not make it. How is gambling really, though, not a lesson in how life kind of happens? And what would some specific dynamics of resiliency be that are missed when we encourage our kids to play games like this?
I want kids to be resilient when they recognize that they could have done better. Like they made a mistake. They forgot to study. They didn't tie their shoes, so they tripped in the race. Is there something you could have done differently so that you could have performed at a different level? So it's a skill-based resiliency. It's a heart-based resiliency. I made a mistake. I didn't love my mom well enough to work hard on the task. So I'm going to love her better because she's worthy of that. And therefore, I will show up and work better tomorrow at this task that my mom has assigned to me. Gambling is just this random nonsense. There's nothing that I might be able to own there. So I'm not sure it builds much of resiliency at all. And if I wanted to teach kids about odds, like I get what you're saying about the potential, and I understand that you're not saying let's go gamble. You're saying, is there anything valid here? Is there anything attractive? Is that what a person is attracted to? That's an interesting question. And I think that's worthy of exploring as a family to have this discussion. So what if we rolled the dice and wrote down just do one die, how many times do we get a 1? Like, I really want a 1. I really want a 1. And we get a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 3 and a 4. And finally we get a 1. Nothing I could do to control that. I don't know if there's ways that we could show them, a game of chance versus a game of skill. And if that would be something that could come out of this discussion.
I really appreciated Dr. Kathy's insight on this topic. This is something that we don't really talk about a lot. But I do think that there's some things that kind of lay beneath the surface of this issue, that it seems innocent enough. And for many guys like myself and friends that I have, it's natural for us to look at things like gambling, especially sports betting, as something that's just kind of part of the game, and it's part of the enjoyment of the game. But there's a verse that's kind of convicted me a little bit on this, and it comes out of Proverbs chapter 14, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 7. Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way, but the folly of fools is deceiving. One of the things that we can kind of feel with Proverbs is almost like a fortune cookie, just kind of a wise saying that maybe we should live by, or maybe we can just kind of discard and not really think through. But there's some dynamics, especially in this proverb, that I think we need to take to heart. And that is that inside of gambling, there is this sense of deception and sleight of hand and kind of an understanding of playing the game. And I think having these conversations with our kids, just openly and honestly, about what it means to be prudent, to practice withholding, to practice discerning the way that things should go, rather than engaging in a game of chance or deception. I think teaching our kids to think through that is really important. And as Dr. Kathy kind of pointed out, it also has an impact on how we view ourselves and what we understand we're on this earth to do. These are tiny muscles, and elsewhere in Scripture, they're called little foxes. And the psalmist encourages us to beware of those little foxes. So this might be a little fox that's burrowing in our minds that we need to call out, be attentive to, have the conversation, and test our hearts and minds against what Scripture says. Doing that is going to be a bright light that shines and cuts through darkness and confusion on different topics, especially this one on gambling. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast. In this, our daily segment, Facing the Dark. I'm so glad you joined us this week, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you here again on Monday.